After West Ham bottled it at Brentford, we turned up at Villa Park and Be Still My Beating Heart gave them an absolute footballing lesson. Everybody put in a shift. Three Lungs Gallagher was a cheat code. Van der Ven looked like, well, Van der Ven. And that dreaded, turgid double pivot of Bentancur-Palhinha was like silk and steel. Even Muwani wasn't bad. Of course, the media are calling it a lame surrender, fuming about integrity. But Villa have got their eyes on the same prize as us last season, and they've lost 3 on the bounce. We lost 20. RDZ gets more impressive by the day. Pre-match, he told the players to silence the negative voices about injuries, medical staff and cursed pitches and all that shit. He said beating Villa wouldn't be a miracle. Well, maybe not, but beating them like that in the context of a Frank Tudor season felt close to miraculous. What a job he's doing. The tide is turning at last. We even had a ref who didn't seem to have an agenda in it, Gary. Next up, resurgent Leeds. If we win and West Ham lose to the Goons, are we as good as safe? Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll have Room 101, some nonsense and twaddle, and a brand new feature for you. Strap in. It's Nice Ones.
Nice one, Cyril.
So, welcome to Nice One, Cyril. I'm Simon Lipson, a one-time professional Ronnie Corbett impressionist, which is fitting because I've been waffling on this podcast for the last 6 months, trying to find a punchline. We've got Julie Welch, who, as we speak, is hurriedly redrafting the final chapter of her definitive Spurs tome, striking through the word relegation, but with a pencil for now. Kev Acott, eternal optimist, who predicted Spurs wins for our previous 15 defeats, but spared us all and went for a draw against Villa. And Rob White, son of the legendary ghost John, who's been struggling to reconcile the soaring orchestral majesty of his DNA with this season's Radiohead dirge. There we are. Welcome one and all. So, well, come on. We beat the Villa. Why don't we plunge straight in with Rob? Impressions of that performance?
It was a lovely way to spend a Sunday evening, to be absolutely honest. Such a refreshing change, and there was a sort of air of pessimism. I live in N17, so there was an air of pessimism, not just surrounding me, but around quite a few people I bumped into in the Antwerp Arms on Sunday afternoon. And actually, the game started fantastically. Obviously, we scored. Well, Gallagher scored, and then we scored again. And I guess my default is, have we scored too early now? But actually, we were in control for most of the game, except for almost the last kick of the game. And it all seemed like a walk in the park. It was fantastic, and it was so lovely to hear the away fans who I thought they made such an impact on the TV. So it was brilliant.
The fans were fantastic, and I think the way that the players responded to the fans afterwards was something else. It really bespoke a kind of a togetherness that we've possibly been lacking a bit this season. Not surprisingly, given we had Frank and Tudor really kind of creating a schism between us and the players. Kev, it was our must-win match, wasn't it? Another one, 15th in a row. We scraped past Wolves. Interestingly, I thought we were very good against Brighton. Then I felt we went backwards a bit against Wolves, and yet this performance was comfortably our best of the season. What do you think's changed?
I think they're believing in themselves. I think they have confidence. I think his belief in them has rubbed off and just sort of resurrected that self-confidence, which they must all have had at one point. It's just hard to remember back that far, really. This was the first really convincing display we've had for a long, long time, I think. But it was also partly about the team and the way that he set the team up, and partly or largely in some ways about Kinski rather than Vicario. and Gallagher suddenly, finally, sort of coming into his own. I mean, I know I've sort of gone on about him every week because I was so disappointed. I thought he was a good buy. Just the bits that I sort of caught of him at Chelsea and Palace before, and he's done absolutely nothing until yesterday. And he was great goal, and the type of midfielder we really need. And Bentancur, I didn't agree with that starting lineup yesterday. I didn't think Bentancur and Palhinha, that double pivot thing has always been a bit dreary. It has always been a bit Radiohead. And I would have started personally with Bergvall and Archie, but I'd have been wrong. I think they were absolutely, it was just the right midfield for that match.
Yeah, I do think Bentancur's brought a certain kind of maturity and calmness and just that technical touch. He received the ball anywhere and he knows what's around him and he can offload it and find the right man and all that stuff. He's terrific. Palhinha, Julie is your mate, of course. I know you're quite fond of him. And there's been a lot of talk, hasn't there, recently about whether we would actually retain him going into wherever the hell we are next season. But performing like that, you think he is indispensable. It was a really heroic and brilliant, committed performance, wasn't it?
The guy is an absolutely class player. I was absolutely delighted when he was signed in last summer, because I've always thought he was brilliant when he was at Fulham. And nothing's really changed my mind. He's scored a few important goals. I mean, it's been such a bloody awful season that he hasn't been able to sort of shine the way he should have been. But now we've got RDZ, as I call him. He's showing everybody why he arrived in the first place. I think he's a fantastic player. Knocking on a bit, but who isn't? Hang on to him. He makes all the difference. And now that Gallagher has actually been able to sort of settle himself into the side, we've actually got a proper midfield. What I think is, I agree with Kev that, we've got a coach at last who can actually set up a team for a match, which we haven't had in the past. I think it explains why, particularly recently, till RDZ arrived, they'd all been sort of going around looking more and more hangdog because they just didn't know what was asked of them. And at last we've got a guy who actually tells them what he wants from them. And I think that's made all the difference to Gallagher, who has, on my other WhatsApp group, is being talked of as, doing what Steve Perryman used to do. I mean, my feelings about that is, steady on, he's only been here a few hours, so we won't get into that yet. But, I am so pleased now that he was actually signed, and it might be the only good thing that one half of the Chuckle Brothers has ever done for us, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I mean, it's like Kev. I was very excited when we signed him. I thought we bought ourselves a guy with not only tremendous endurance and running power, but some mobility on the ball. And I think we saw all of that against Villa the other day. He was just everywhere. He was making tackles high up the pitch from the word go, and he was there all the way through and never gave an inch. It was an extraordinary performance. Rob, we talk about, the mess that we were left, or that De Zerbi was left by his predecessors. It's taken something special, really, hasn't it, to turn this around, not just in terms of the way the team sets up, because it looks like everybody knows what they're doing and where they're supposed to be and where they're supposed to be running. I don't want to take ownership of this comment because I think it was somebody else said it on another crappy podcast, but that Hinsky has become Romero. He's had to become Romero, the guy who can pass from deep and break the lines, because we've got no one else who does that from deep. And his calmness and his, he's so assured. He's kicking he didn't have to make a save really, but I think it starts there.
Absolutely, yeah. And actually, there was a moment yesterday where I caught myself and thought, hang on a second, he's just kicked the ball with his left foot. And I'm sure a second ago he kicked the ball with his right foot. And I now don't know whether Kinski is right-footed or left-footed. And I had the same problem with Vicario, but only because he was shit with either foot. Whereas Kinski's the polar opposite, and his distribution off of either foot, it actually looks like it goes where he means the ball to go. I caught a snippet of an interview with him. It was on social media today, but I think it was a Spurs interview. Probably everybody's seen it. But his mentality seems fantastic. Talking about actually 95% isn't good enough. It's got to be 100%, which yes is a soundbite, but I think as a goalkeeper that's like primarily importance. Everything, and it seems that everything he does well. So yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with you. And no matter, like myself, whatever level of football I've played in, even now playing five-a-side, if you've got a shit goalie behind you, it's always going to be there in your mind, no matter what I do. Somewhere along the line, this guy is going to let us down. So I think Kinski's been a massive difference. It'll be interesting to see, maybe when he does come under a bit more pressure, because obviously there was no pressure yesterday. Well, very little pressure. But even when he was stood waiting to distribute the ball, there wasn't that nervousness that there's been for the last. Well, actually, it was partly when Lloris was here. There was a nervousness sometimes, but it was a different nervousness. So yeah, I think he's really making a difference already.
Yeah, we talked, didn't we, Kev, last week about whether Kinski is seen by the club as a genuine number one contender, or whether he's going to be at some point replaced by a named goalkeeper or somebody else with more experience or whatever. But I mean, there were a couple of moments several moments in during the course of the match when he just stood on the ball and he just waited and looked around, and he was quite happy to be pressed because he knows he's got the ability to unload and find his man. And as Rob says, it's such a difference from poor old Flappy. You don't know where it's going. You know, if the ball comes to him, it could roll under his foot. It could go anywhere. And I think that has inspired people like Van der Ven and Porro and Udogie, who I thought was terrific the other day and gives us so much more balance, because you've got this solidity and certainty behind you.
Yeah, I mean, there was one moment in the first half where he did stand on the ball with the ball for such a long time that it was hard not to think, oh my God, it's Tottenham. Don't do that. Don't do that, because it's not going to work. But it worked. It worked perfectly. It was the right thing to do. And I mean, there've been times certainly where Romero's done something different, and it's worked. It's been the right thing to do. There's been other times where it hasn't. But it showed his confidence in himself, I think, to do that, to just think, right, I'm going to slow things down, I'm going to calm things down, and I'm going to make the right bit of distribution to the right person. It's great having that confidence, because I don't think any of us or any of the players have had confidence in Vicario. I don't think they could have done, really.
So let's move on from Kinski. There were so many standout performances. In fact, I'm inclined to say everyone was a standout. I want to focus a little bit on Tell, because he was busy and he put in a beautiful cross for Richie's goal. I want to focus on Richie, who's your mate, of course, another one of your mates, Julie. We actually look composed and together and organised going forward. And that's something we just haven't seen. And we were talking about, we've lost all of our creative players. We've lost Solanke. How the fuck are we going to score? Well, I thought we made scoring look pretty straightforward against a good side.
Well, for a start, I think he and Tell have a good understanding. I think Moani might actually be getting there. I mean, he does sort of buzz around so much that you just want to swat him still, but I think he's getting there. But I mean, as you know, I absolutely love Richarlison. I think he always scores an important goal. He misses a lot as well, but how many has he scored this season? I think it's 10, something like that. I mean, he's just a lovely bloke, and he's a real team player as well. He's got no side. He congratulates everybody, gives them all a hug. With him and Tell together, I think we can survive, the loss of Solanke for the next few weeks. But can I do a bit of fangirling about Danso, by the way? Because I just think he is absolutely great. I feel so much better with Danso in the middle of defence than I ever did with Romero, because he's just sort of, well, he's reliable, isn't he? When he was standing near the corner flag, he was about to do one of those long throws. Well, that's what sort of led to Gallagher's goal, of course. But I just thought, this is a smashing player. We're really lucky to have him. This guy has got a hinterland as well. He speaks a lot of languages. He's obviously a very bright guy. He doesn't deserve to be playing in the Championship. We've got to stay up so that Danso can sort of blossom and become the Danso that we know he can become, basically.
He's been tremendous, Danso. I mean, Kev, we talked about, is he actually the right guy in this situation compared to Romero? Because, you've got Romero's kind of cultured lunacy against this sort of very honest, tough, humble guy. There was an interview with Danso actually after the match, and this humility and intelligence and articulacy was notable. And he just doesn't have that ego. He's there to get his head on the ball underneath the crossbar and get it the fuck away. And we know he made a mistake against Brighton. Okay, players make mistakes all the time, but there was something about this performance. He's becoming more and more heroic in my eyes.
Yeah, he is. And I mean, similarly to Kinski in a way, just that, you just said sort of, he's honest, he's humble, he's tough as well. And that is what we need right now. We need a team of people playing like him. And actually yesterday we pretty much had a team of people playing like that. But he's been part of this, slight, I was going to say resurrection, that's a bit overstated, isn't it? But the slight improvement that we've had, but a clear improvement we've had. And some of that's about temperament. It's not just the way he's playing. It's that, again, confidence that he gives out. Same as Kinski. I think they've both been really important, and they will be really important for the next 3 matches as well. Yeah, he's great. He's great. It's someone else that you sort of think, I don't want them to bring in someone else, some £50 million defender or whatever. I'm all right with him.
Yep, absolutely. Rob, there's something we've talked about a lot on this podcast, which is performative bullshit. We think, obviously Porro is the one of the prime offenders, going up to the crowd and giving them all of that and kissing the badge. There were 2 moments in the second half. One was Palhinha making a staggering tackle and then doing a little back flick and coming away with the ball, and eventually, and then he celebrated like fucking, he's just scored the winning goal in the World Cup final. And I thought, go on, son, I love it. And then Porro did something similar 20 minutes later. And for the first time ever, he didn't piss me off. I don't know whether it was just good vibes, because we were winning. But actually, no, of course, beginning to think, do you know what? I like that. Where do you stand on performative bullshit?
I'm all for it. Right time, right place, and particularly our players. And the bizarre thing about the Palhinha one, it was, we're in May now, but there was actually steam came out of his mouth. If you watch that again in slow motion, there's this sort of phantom breath that comes out of his, like a bull, basically. And actually, when you were talking, I was thinking it was really interesting because I thought Porro played a much more within himself role. And I don't know if this is a new thing by De Zerbi, but I thought there was a point where Udogie actually made a really conscious decision not to go down the wing, to come back to control the ball second half. But actually Porro, there was quite a large part of the game where I didn't even really see Porro, but he was just doing what he had to do. And I think that makes a massive difference. For me, and it wasn't performative, almost the highlight of the game for me was when Moani when he got subbed off and he was giving high fives to the away fans. And that actually the other part, which almost brought a tear to my eye, was when he kissed Paulinho on the back of the head, which again, little signs of this team is actually believing in trusting each other rather than, we've had months and months of people waving their arms about and looking for excuses and blaming other people. And now there's a collective that let's hope it can survive for the last 3 games of the season and flourish.
Yeah, unquestionably a kind of a team spirit that seems to be building that we haven't seen all season, though. They were doing that thing of all walking off at halftime together because to somehow protect each other from the abuse. This is different because I think actually all the players are entitled to celebrate this one. And I hope they weren't over celebrating. There was an argument last week Julie made about Simmons over celebrating, or the week before, his goal against Brighton, and you just thought, no, too early, son, too early. But this, I don't know. Perhaps the players know, they feel it in their water that the tide is turning. But inevitably, there were comments after the match that Villa were bad, that they were much changed, they were under strength, they were unmotivated because they've got this very important Europa League match coming up later this week. But, as I mentioned in the monologue at the top, they had lost their previous 2 games playing with full-strength teams. And Emery, who I thought was incredibly good after the match, and he said, no, you know what? These players should be capable of turning in a performance. And I'm not having that. They were I just think they were outplayed. Okay, they had their minds on other things, but there were players there who could have been playing for their places in the semi-final and maybe even final team.
There was part of me that wanted to sort of say to everyone, let's not talk about the social media reaction to our performance and Villa's performance, because it's so fucking annoying. Just there's so much nonsense. Yes, Villa were crap. They were. And yes, we were good. Those 2 things are possible. Every team does this. At certain stages of towards the end of the season. West Ham themselves did it, but weren't able to beat a much reduced and still pissed Crystal Palace a couple of weeks ago. So it's just annoying. And there was part of me thinking, I don't want to just take the edge off how well we played by giving it too much credence. This was mostly Twitter nonsense. I saw a couple of really nice tweets actually from Villa fans saying we were crap, but you deserved to win and you played well. And it's just part of this conspiracy nonsense as well, isn't it? What's going on at the moment? There's more and more conspiracies every day.
And the obvious counter, of course, is, well, okay, you change 7 players, we're without 10. So, yes. It's just not a valid argument. No. Julie, let's talk about RDZ/RDZ. Now, I know you go for the Americanization, which we frown upon, the rest of us here on the podcast. He said before the match, the most important challenge now is to silence the voice inside of us, inside of the players, inside of the staff, and inside of the fans. The voice can produce negative thoughts. The voice says we are unlucky. We have too many injuries. We lost Xavi. People talking about the medical staff not good enough, the pitch, the stadium, etc., etc. And then he said, I think all these negative stuff is rubbish. He said, and if we win at Villa Park, it's not a miracle. And I think this kind of mature approach, not looking for excuses, it's about the players. It's about giving them belief. It's in their hands. And I think that's possibly what he's done for this team, above and beyond the organisational.
Well, it's also permeated through to the fans, I think, because although I didn't mention it at the time because I thought everybody would just think I was deranged, all day yesterday, I just thought we're going to win this. And this never happens to me. But I think, I never, ever these days feel optimistic about Spurs. I thought I was expecting a day of existential dread, and I tried to work up some existential dread, but I couldn't. I just thought, we're going to win. And I'm sure partly that it's the kind of attitude that RDZ has, or RDZ as you want me to call him, but I won't. He has changed the mood of the fans as well as the players, I think. And that is actually a help to the team as well, because the fans are not going to be getting on the players' backs. No more booing and things like that. As you were saying earlier, the players don't have to go into the tunnel, together to protect themselves from the supporters. He has changed the whole mood and atmosphere in what's a very short length of time. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. But I am going to say it. I think we are going to win enough points for the rest of the season, and we will save ourselves, and we are not going to get relegated. So just, hang me at the end of the season when it all goes pear-shaped. But that's what I think.
Let's move on a little bit. Other performances, there was just so many that we could refer to. What did you make of Spence coming on? That was an interesting change, wasn't it? Taking off Muani, he was having he was annoying them. He was getting around his man, was it Matson, quite frequently. He came off, to much applause and much admiration. And on came Spence, and Spence is not a right winger, but he played pretty far up the field. It was an odd one, but you can't say it didn't work.
He's sort of just having to work with what he's got at the moment, isn't he? And maybe that's something that's perhaps working in his favour slightly, because there's not that many changes, and obviously 2-0 up, more defensive-minded player coming on. But yeah, I thought Spence was all right. I thought he was absolutely fine.
Kev, for the last 20 minutes, I felt we dropped deep, and there was I know somebody on our WhatsApp group was saying, "Oh, hello, this is a bit worrying. We're inviting them on and what have you." They kind of created 2 chances. They scored from one, and Ming's header went over the top. I was slightly shitting bricks for the last 20 or 30 minutes, but the truth of it was that if you were watching that objectively as opposed to subjectively, you'd probably be thinking, Villa have got no chance here. This game's done and dusted.
Yeah, and that's the terrible thing about being a football fan in a way, isn't it? When you have this sort of split between your emotional subjective reaction and the objective sensibly rationally, we were always going to win that from the first 15-20 minutes. We were so dominant. But the longer it went on, the more worrying things became. Villa did become slightly better in the second half, and we sort of pulled back a little bit. But actually, although there was that sort of, some anxiety around, no, I didn't think we were gonna lose that. Either the sensible Kev or emotional Kev. Neither of them thought we were going to lose that, really.
Well, listen, this is all good stuff. This is all grist to the mill as far as I'm concerned. We do need sensible and emotional Kev on the podcast, and I'm pleased to hear they were in agreement. I did get a bit concerned, to be honest, towards the end there. I just thought, I suppose it's because we're so used to the Spursiness of Spurs, and you think, oh God, even when we let the goal in, you thought, oh fuck, they're going to break, they're going to come down the field and score an equaliser, and I suppose it's ingrained, isn't it? I tell you what, I just want to relate a story today that happened to me. I went for a walk with my wife. We had a little stroll through the Hampstead Heath, and only when we got to our destination, we were meeting some friends for lunch, that I realised my phone had fallen out of my pocket at some point. Anyway, some kindly gentleman had picked it up and somehow managed to break my code and got through to a mate of mine to bring us and say, this guy's got your phone. Anyway, the long and short was, very, very kindly brought the phone to us in Hampstead. And it was off. And I didn't think much of it until I set off back to where I'd come from, and I turned the phone on. And that fucker had put a picture of Thierry Henry in front of the North Bank as my wallpaper. And I've got to be honest with you, I found it very funny. Anyway, there we are. Now, that's my phone story, and that happened today. Let's have a little look at some transfer cobblers. Andy Robertson is coming, by the way. Did you know that? As long as we stay up. RTZ, would he want him, like a knackered old left back? Why? Apparently we're after some Bournemouth centre-back on a free. Why? Why do people bother with this? And Vicario Julie, Flappy, apparently is in full agreement to join Inter Milan for 20 mil.
Yeah, they must be mad. I'm just looking forward to saying goodbye, Flappy. But in a way, I should be sad because, it's been so lovely to be able to take the piss out of him all this season. And we will need a new object of our mirth.
We'll always have that save in Bilbao, won't we, at the end?
Will.
And, for that, we can be eternally grateful. Apparently, one of our better buys, Alejo Veliz, is going to Bahia for 9 mil. He was shit, wasn't he? He was a big old lump. Why did they ever buy him? And we hear Yves Bissouma and Ben Davis, they're out of contract at the end of this season.
My Newcastle supporting son has informed me that we're going to get Nick Voltemada.
Well, he's a good player, but this is all idle, pointless speculation, Rob. But let's put ourselves into Johan Langer's office. Given that he is shit and doesn't know what he's doing and left us desperately short in January and before, of course, he's not really thinking about transfers, is he? He's probably thinking, if we stay up, well done me.
Yeah, and it doesn't really answer your question, but I was having a bit of an existential crisis during the week, and I have been known to over-worry about things and overcomplicate the world. And I was thinking, how do the logistics work? We've got 4 games left. We've got a World Cup to fit in. We've got a shitload of players. If we were to go down, there's a whole load of players you need to move on. It's not just like selling something at a car boot sale. It's actually, this has to be arranged. And then we've got to get other players in to fill those gaps. And I was actually sort of doing my head in a little bit. Does anyone know what the logistics would be of all of this, getting people in and getting people out?
Yeah, it's all just Gary of Harlow airing his nonsense on the social media, of course. Anyway, let's have some daft tweets. This was prior to the Villa match. Someone tweeted, "All eyes on VAR." This is a West Ham tweeter, by the way. "All eyes on VAR at Villa Park tomorrow to see if some people's conspiracy theories bear fruit." B-A-R-E. And then we got a Zionist plot, by the way, we discovered today to send West Ham down and keep Tottenham up. Someone said it was an inside job as heinous as 9/11. What is the matter with these fucking idiots? And I think all this proves is that their stupid fans are as stupid as our stupid fans. So it's kind of a comfort, isn't it? This was someone talking about Solanke this week, post-injury. Bar Ndombele, our worst signing ever by a long way. Solanke. What? Really? And someone else called him another useless prick. All right. Here's one that just slightly amused me, just because I don't know. Anyway, see what you think. There are few things I love more than hearing the fans audibly sing when the Spurs go marching in, as opposed to hearing them sing inaudibly.
Language.
And then we had this one during the match. During the match against Villa, Tell is finally playing in his, inverted commas, preferred position and having a stinker. What match is this idiot watching? What is he watching? Anyway, so there we are. There are our tweets for this week. There's so many more we could have picked out. Let's do some Room 101. Julie.
Okay, well, mine is just very simple, really. Peppa Pig, our new brand, whatever. Can these people not read the room? I mean, okay, maybe announce it after the Villa game because we're all happy. But, before the Villa game, when we're still in this really anxious state, fucking Peppa Pig. Oh, dear me, dear me. Who's that? What is it meant to achieve?
That was my confusion. Who does it serve? Who's the bigger deal in that partnership? That's one thing that I couldn't work out. Is it us or Peppa Pig as a global brand? And actually, how much money is it generating? Defies any sort of logic. Imagine if you're the guy or the person that's brokered that deal. I'll use the word brokered that deal because it sounds great. Sitting around a boardroom table, somebody saying, break the news to us. Yeah, it's Peppa Pig. And just, it's like something out of W1A or the thick of it, basically.
It really is. All right, moving on. Rob, what have you got for us in Room 101?
Well, mine's quite simple as well, actually, and it's this time of year. And again, if somebody can explain the logic for me, but it's the phrase, "This is a real 6-pointer," because nothing is a 6-pointer. It's just 3 points to one side and 3 points to the other. There is not an award. Oh, there you go, 6 points. Have it. it doesn't work that way. And everybody's using that freaking phrase, and they have been for years, and it makes no sense. So let's just get rid of the bloody thing.
Yeah, I think that is an absolute nailed on Room 101 for us. Kev, what have you got?
Well, yeah, originally I was going to go for Pepper the Pig, but Julie's beaten me to it. But I'm sort of glad, because I don't really know what Pepper the Pig is, or I don't know. I'm going to go for something unusual for a Tottenham fan. I'm going to go for Chelsea. I want to put Chelsea Football Club, as we should call them, obviously, Chelsea Football Club into Room 101, because I watched the match against Forest, so some of it this afternoon. They're terrible. Chelsea are terrible. They're a horrible, horrible club for so many reasons. I've got a couple of good friends are Chelsea fans, but, it's like a friend who's a murderer you got on really, really well with, but they've committed some horrible crime. You can't ever quite see beyond the crime. But particularly Chelsea, because we know what's gonna happen when we play them, don't we? However well we're doing, and whether we even need a draw or not, we know they're going to play well against us. But it's also, because I was saying to someone the other day, it's also, what annoys me is that they took away my lifelong hatred of Arsenal, because particularly during the Wenger era, there was no real justification for hating Arsenal apart from growing up hating Arsenal, and there was so much justification to hate Chelsea. They were just an awful, awful team and awful club for so many reasons. But they took that away, and I've had to work pretty hard. I mean, thanks largely to Arteta, really, and Gabriel, to hate Arsenal as much as I used to when I was a kid. So I blame Chelsea for taking my eye off the ball, really, when it comes to football hatred.
I absolutely, gosh. I mean, that is a shocking thing to happen to any person. So, interestingly, of course, they lost to Forest. They were smashed. And someone had, we just got this in from Lee Brown of This Parish, a tweet coming in from a guy called John Bruin saying, Chelsea auditioning for the role of next season's Spurs, which is quite funny, is it not? Now then, I've got a couple of things I wanted to chuck in Room 101 briefly. One is the phrase, stay humble. Stay humble. Fuck off. The other one is this. We all remember the nose-picking, ball-scratching Joachim Löw, who was the German manager, and a very successful manager. And, we remember him doing that and then shaking hands with people. He said, oh, for Christ's sake. And I was reminded of this because I was on the tube the other day, and there was a guy, very well-dressed looking guy, probably 55, 60, sitting just down the aisle, and he stuck his thumb up his nose, not his finger, his thumb. And he dragged out some stuff, and he bit it from underneath his nail and ate it. And I thought, oh my God, this is just nauseating. Anyway, he did this, cleaned out both nostrils, many, many ways, and different fingers. And, he obviously had a bit like a golfer, using different fingers for different bits of snot. And I just was, when you're looking on horrified and you don't want to look, you want to look away, but you can't. And then he got off at the same stop as us, and he was just ahead of us, and he put that picking hand on the rail. And I thought, whenever I come to this station, I can never, ever touch that rail ever again. It was repellent and disgusting, and I'm putting nose pickers into Room 101. All right, I'll tell you what else I want to do. Just a little feature that I'm going to try out with you. It may go horribly wrong. Julie, if you were trying to explain Spurs to someone who's never watched football, how would you do that?
Do you want a cynical version or a passionate version? I'm going to give you the passionate version.
All versions.
Well, okay. The whole thing about Spurs is that it's a club which has been first in so many things. First to achieve the double. First English club to win in Europe. And the first club to have a pejorative adjective created after it. It's just special. It's, and great writers actually write about Spurs. That's all I'm saying. Buy my book.
Well, I can't think of any off the top of my head, Julie, but I'm sure you're right. Rob, you have such a strong connection with the club all your life, your dad. How would you go about explaining what Spurs is to someone who's never watched football?
Again, it's a tricky one. I think first, well, probably the most succinct way of describing it is a long-running, high-budget drama series set in the heart of North London. And through most of my Spurs supporting life, well, Spurs are never far from the back pages, or they've never been that far from the back pages. Normally for what we hope are the right reasons, sometimes for the wrong reasons, and more recently, I guess, for the wrong reasons. And maybe this is part of why other clubs are reveling in our downfall at the moment, is there's this belief that we are superior in the way that we play, in the style of football that, and you know, I'm old enough and wise enough to believe that it could be a misheld belief, but actually this belief that we are the club that do things the right way, we're the club that signs talent, not necessarily. We gamble on the talent that we sign, and we always like to think that we have an eye for flair and an eye for doing things beautifully, but actually the reality is somewhat different. And that would probably be my starting point. And I mean, I could ramble and waffle on about us getting, you know, what club chooses Hotspur as part of its name, and then you have to live up to the legend of Harry Hotspur. So yeah, there's a hell of a long. I think this could be a long running series for you, basically, Simon.
Yeah, I mean, are we going to come back to this? And Kev, what have you got for us?
I was thinking about this, and I think I would try and explain it in terms of that person, that one that got away, the first person you loved, the first person you just had that real connection with. And for me, it was Hilary Collins, and I was 11 years old, and I went on holiday in Lowestoft, and I kept thinking I saw her. I kept thinking, coincidentally, she must have decided to go with her family to Lowestoft on holiday, because I was obsessed with her. We barely spoke. We didn't really have much of a relationship, but I just had that real sense of, I suppose it was sort of love then. And it's almost like having that person, but then that person keeps coming back into your life, goes away, comes back, goes away, comes back, and always there, always affecting other relationships in some ways. So, yeah, I think I would say to someone that's the closest I can think of it is it's a lifelong relationship that probably doesn't necessarily do you any good ultimately, but it feels great.
I like that very much. I something on similar lines. I regard Spurs. It's kind of like having your best friend, and he's a poet, brilliant, eccentric poet, and he never remembers your birthday. He never returns your calls. He's a terrible friend, but once a month he writes you a sonnet that's so beautiful it makes you cry. And that, Julie, come on, that's lyrical, isn't it? You're a writer. Come on, be honest.
Simon,
beautiful was that?
I'm impressed. I'm impressed. You know, considering
Thank you.
it's you who came up with it, I am impressed.
Thank you very much. Listen, I'm an oik, I'm an oik, I'm a Philistine, and I've come up with that, and I think, come on, be honest. Now then, we're playing Leeds at the weekend. Spam are playing Goons. Let's not talk about that because we can't affect that, but obviously we can affect our performance against Leeds. Leeds, resurgent Leeds. Rob, how do you see this one going?
Again, I think one of the brilliant things about RDZ or RDZ was his comments afterwards about, basically remembering, taking the players back to how we felt before we played Wolves, and the fans and everybody. And actually, I think so. I think if we play anywhere near as well as we played yesterday, we will beat Leeds. If we don't, then who knows what will happen? And we could be back to this angst of what's going to happen. But I think hopefully we'll have enough to see our way past Leeds. Again, it's a bit cruel that it's on Monday. Well, this time next week, actually, we'll be getting ready for it. But so I think we should have enough to beat them, just depending on how our mentality is. And he's got another week to work with them, which is fantastic.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we hope, don't we, Kev, that Leeds are on the beach. I don't think they've got anything to play for particularly other than pride. And of course, we know that can be a powerful motivating factor. Someone was saying the other day that, we've got 3 games left, 2 of them at home. And I'm thinking, shit, really? But I don't know how you're our, the podcast's most optimistic pundit. What do you make of this game? Please say we're going to lose.
I know it makes me very wary of publicly saying I think we're going to win. So I'm not going to say that. I think we're going to get absolutely hammered. I just want to say I like Leeds. Some of my favourite people have been Leeds fans, and I spent an evening last week in a pub with a bunch of Leeds fans who I'd never actually met, and they were nice blokes as well. So I don't want us to absolutely thrash them, but I would be incredibly pleased if we did. I didn't want them to go down. They're not going to go down, and I think they owe us, and they owe me, because I've just said really generous things about Leeds fans.
On that basis alone, Kev, that they, you think they're nice people, they do certainly. They are indebted to us, and therefore should give us the game. Julie, you are probably the podcast's most pessimistic pundit. How do you see this one going?
I think with the new confidence and togetherness that we've all noticed in the team, that'll stand us in good stead. God, I'm really digging out the cliches here. I don't feel worried about it at all. I'm quite sanguine. I think that we will probably have a home win, actually.
Okay, and of course, we are hoping that the goons will do us a favour. And there's all that usual crap about, we don't really want the goons to beat West Ham because we don't want them to win the league. Don't be an idiot. I just want to say thank you to Rob White, thank you to Kev Acott, and to Julie Welch. You can follow us on Twitter at NiceOneCyrilPod. We've got our own website, www.niceonecyrilpodcast.co.uk. All the episodes are on there. And give us a follow on the podcast platform of your choosing, and you'll never miss an episode. That's it from us. We'll be back after... Well, we may have to record on Tuesday. What are you thinking, guys? Because there's no point recording while the match is on next Monday. This is just admin that our listeners don't need to know about. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Come on, you Spurs.
Nice one, Cyril.